having a book conversation with uh, Miss Rana Safvi, and I'm so happy and so delighted to read her a new book. It's actually the second last book. I think this is not the recent one, right? Yeah, yes. So, In Search of the Divine: Living Histories of Sufism in India. As a introductory remark, I was going through the book so deeply, uh, which I am actually experiencing the Sufism in a way that she experienced it in many dargahs she visited for, I think, for a long time since her childhood. And Yeah, so should we start, ma'am, or just directly? As a question to introduce, how can you define Sufism in a very straight and simple forward way?
The word Sufism is taken as an ism or a philosophy or a theory, but it's not that. It comes from the Arabic word tasawwuf. And tasawwuf means contemplation of God, and in a very ethical and in a very pure manner. So, that's why people get confused and they say that it is not part of Islam. Tasawwuf or contemplation of God is very much a part of Islam. And so, what a Sufi does is he it's a mystical journey towards moral and ethical perfection in a search to find God, and that's the aim of a Sufi, which we keep hearing in a lot of ghazals, visal or union. So that is why, like, Sufism is not, it's not ghazal, it's not qawwali, it's not dargahs, it's not, cool Sufi hip music that you hear. It is a very, very strict discipline, a mystical path of ethical and moral cleansing of self to realize God within ourselves.
Connecting to that, when you're writing the introductory chapter, you are saying that okay, Sufism is a kind of an experience. So Islam is very strict religion. It has always so yesterday it was the Friday Juma prayer, when we are sitting in front of the ulama. He's talking about the punishments in the hell. You have to follow this particular kind of thing in order to go into heaven, etc., etc. So in the book you are talking about, rather than go fearing about the punishments, Sufism is always about tauba. Taufism is always about a kind of a belief, way controlling the nafs, etc., etc. Can you give us a bit more uh, on your perspective?
So, by the when Islam came, when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he brought Islam, introduced Islam into Arabia, it was a very simple religion. It was, like, you follow the five pillars of Islam, and then you have that pillars of Iman and Ihsan, and you follow that, and Islam, the word itself means brotherhood. But when it went into its expansionist phase, and there were so many conquests, and after that there was a need felt to formalize Islam. And at that point of time, you have all those four schools of jurisprudence: the Hanafi, the Hanbali, the Shafi, etc. And they made very strict laws, and people, by this is about 100 years after the Wisal of the Prophet himself, and people started feeling that the pure and the simple brotherhood and the message of Islam had got lost in the harsh legalism of this thing of the jurisprudence, and they wanted a more like a more experiential relationship with God rather than an intellectual and a rational relationship. And that is where Sufism came up, because that was an answer to the spiritual expectations or the spiritual realization of the Muslims. And it comes up about in the 7th, 8th century with Hassan al-Basri. So that is why I always say, and every religion tells us that you must be scared of God. But Rabia al-Basri, who is a 8th century Sufi mystic, she's the first to come up with ecstatic Islam. And her poem is very famous. Most of you would have heard it, that if I love you out of fear of hell, then throw me into hell. I'm paraphrasing it because I don't remember it exactly. But what she says is that if I love you out of fear of hell, throw me into hell. If I love you for the greed of paradise, deny it to me. But if I love you for your beauty, then do not deny yourself to me. So that is what Sufism taught, and that is what Islam was based in. And I've talked in the book also of the hadith Jibrail. If you want, I can talk of it now or a little later, which what I should discuss it now. So this, the fact that people say that Sufism is divorced from Islam is again based on 18th, 19th century Orientalists who felt that something, because they did not have access to all the literature that was written in Arabic and then later Persian, the Malfuzat, etc. And they felt that something that is so beautiful, so mystical, cannot come out of something which is so much of harsh legalism. And Sufis were seen as somebody who were indifferent to the religious rituals and the religious laws. So that is why they felt that this is, like you'll read everywhere, this is the mystical dimension of Islam. So they place it out of Islam. Whereas if you see Hadith Jibrail, which is, as you all know, Hadith is a collection of the sayings of the Prophet. And Hadith Jibrail is a Hadith Qudsi, which talks of that the Prophet was sitting in the Masjid Nabawi in Medina, and a stranger comes. He's wearing white clothes and he looks like to be a traveler, but his clothes are not creased at all. They're absolutely pristine. He comes and sits next to the Prophet, and in fact rubs his knee against the knee of the Prophet, and everybody is very surprised. And then he starts asking him questions of what is your deen, that is what's your religion, etc. And then he asks the Prophet that please describe your religion to me. And then the Prophet talks, of course, of the five tenets of Islam, the pillars of Islam. And then what most importantly he talks about are two things called ihsan and iman. Now ihsan is that you, when you are praying in any aspect of your God, it is as if God is, like you are seeing God. And if even if you are not seeing God, God is seeing you all the time. So do beautiful deeds. So ihsan in Urdu becomes, like doing a favor to somebody. But ihsan actually means beautiful deeds. And then iman is your faith, and that is faith, of course, is in tawheed and all that, etc., etc. So when you see iman, ihsan, and iman, you see that it is very firmly, Sufism is based on these two tenets of the Prophet, that you do beautiful deeds, and most of the people, saints you'll find, are like there it's because of the generosity of the langar, etc., and the democratic and egalitarian nature of a dargah, where anybody can come, nobody is ever refused in a dargah. So it is that which shows the ihsan and the iman, and why it is so firmly rooted in Islam, not something out of it.
Yeah, the In Search of the Divine is actually a three-part book which Rana Safvi talks about. In the first part, she's trying to situate Sufism in the larger history of Islam, trying to connect it with the household of the Prophet Muhammad. And on the second part, she is trying to give a overview about different Sufi orders and its spread from the Islamic world to the Islamicate region, which is the larger part of Indian subcontinent. And in the third part, which is the most important part of the book, like how we celebrate the saint, or why saints are very important for our life. And I would like to focus on that part. So there are so as you said that there is a constant struggle between the Islamic ulama and the Sufi like the idea of it being a Sufi saint. So this has been, we can see that in our last discussion also, we can see that a kind of polemical interaction always happens for a long time. But in the contemporary time period, which is maybe we can call it as the 21st century, we can always see a kind of very blatant polemics regarding Sufism. There is no serious discussions happening of what exactly Sufi philosophy means to us. So do you see a challenge of this as for the spread of Sufism, or as you try to argue in the book, the emergence of saintly cult, which is in the third stage of Taifa, which is the Spencerian, the Trimminghamian idea of dividing Sufism into three stages. Do you really see that the 21st century is actually coming as a challenge for the spread of Sufism in the world or in the context of India?
Sufism on an intellectual level led to a lot of discussions on religion and, its various aspects. And we have a lot of malfuzat, we have, the Fawaidul Fawad, etc. We have a lot of Sufi literature. You have people like Maulana Rumi, Hafiz, Sadi, all of them, their poetry is rooted in Islam and Sufism. So, like there were discussions on all that, on the meanings, the symbolism of Islam, or the symbolism of, sorry, of a poem, for example, like when even for somebody as popular as Ghalib, when he is talking of, like when I was growing up, I one used to wonder, because we keep wondering why these ghazals keep talking of sharab or alcohol. And then as you grow older, or as you when you learn, you realize that this is these are symbols, that sharab is the devotion, the saqi or the cup bearer is actually God, the divine himself, and the rind, or the person who's drinking, the drunkard, he is the worshipper. So when you start understanding all this, and then you understand that the visal that they keep talking of is not a physical union, it's a union with the divine, it's a spiritual union. So these are the kind of conversations that took place till the 19th century. Today, when you see the ghazals and the poetry, they are on a much more elementary level. And if you go to a dargah, these kind of discussions they may be having in their inner circles, but I haven't come across that. I've only come across in dargahs, and I've visited over 100 dargahs all over India for my for this book. You see people coming there just to interact, ask for the saint, whether it's through a wasila or intercession, or whether it's directly. So today these dargahs have become centers of, prayers for fertility, prayers for the well-being of children, and also, the biggest thing, the association of dargahs, especially in the Deccan, is of exorcism and possession. So that is why this intellectual flavor or the fervor of the Sufis has somewhere been lost. It's become hereditary, it's become more monetary, and it's become definitely commercial.
So in her book, she actually discussed about her personal visit to different dargahs and how she experienced ex-Sufism there, especially the Kawalis, the Ghazals, the Sama Mahfils, which is the gathering of performance of various devotional songs. And in another chapter, you are trying to discuss about how architecture also influenced the ambience of a Sufi shrine. So we can see that I think many of us has visited Sufi dargahs, and there is a we are also trying to situate the dargahs as a space where Hindu-Muslim unity actually works in the past. If you look into some of the news recently, especially the messages circulating in the WhatsApp messages, what we called as WhatsApp University. So we can see a lot of fake news regarding dargahs. Yesterday, you already had a discussion about with Professor Binder Singh with regarding how the fake histories has been created and manifested and narrated in multiple ways. So there is a lot of controversies regarding dargahs. So there is a section of people who trying to argue that from the Muslims that it's a part of polytheism, it's a part of a shirk, or praying to another god in the Islamic tradition is not permissible. On the Hindu side, there is a group of people who trying to say that don't go to these Muslim spaces, and there is a this is a kind of a part of Islamization is happening. So if you are going to a Sufi dargah, there should be conversion will happen. You will be a part of the Islam. So that is also not possible. So do you really think that the dargah as a sacred space or a space of contestation is still a possibility of favoring Hindu-Muslim unity?
It definitely is, and I hope it continues to be. As I said, all the dargahs I visited, whether it was in Bengal or in Hyderabad, unfortunately, due to COVID, I could not come to Kerala and Tamil Nadu, but all over the other states I did go to. Everywhere there were people across faiths and religions and across classes. So, as I said, a dargah is a very egalitarian space, and that is why it is so popular among the masses, because whoever goes there as a seeker. You are not, so you're going to ask for something, and that makes you, in the eyes of everybody, if everybody is a seeker, then you are the same. because there's no high and low, there's no class, and there are no distinctions of caste inside a dargah. When they have a langar, the langar is open for everybody. Whoever wants to eat, nobody is asked, "Okay, are you a Hindu? Are you a Muslim? Are you this caste?" Nobody. Anything, anyone can come and sit there. And I've attended a lot of dargahs everywhere. Dargahs like Ajmer do not serve non-vegetarian because Rajasthan is a primarily had a lot of Jains there, and so who also went there as disciples. In Nagaur again, where Hamidullah, this thing is there, Nagauri, there also no meat is served. In most dargahs, they try to serve only porridge or khichdi because that is what the saints used to eat. And when you said about the contested space, yes, the WhatsApp are there who are trying to say that, oh, don't go to this dargah because so and so possibly converted somebody, they raped women, etc., etc. Which is, like a reputation built over 700-800 years. Is not possible that something like this could have escaped people of that time. Then you have the Orthodox Muslims who say this is grave worship, this is shirk. I am very often told on my Instagram feed that, why do you go to this dargah? And I try to explain to them something which I have explained in the book also, that there is a thing called wasila. So that is intercession. Just as, like if you want to ask your father something, you feel a little scared, so you would go through your mother. So this is a wasila where you ask somebody who is an awliya, wali, a friend of God. You ask the wali to intercede on your behalf to Allah because you feel that he is closer, so his prayers will be answered faster. So that is the space from which the Muslims who go there, or I go there, I go to many dargahs. So, and as far as the egalitarian space is concerned, the Qawwalis you talked about, Qawwalis, especially the ones written by Hazrat Amir Khusro, or at least attributed to him, are very, very simple. Like most of you would have heard the Qawwali, Hari Hari Chudiyan. छाप तिलक सब छीना रे मुझसे नैना मिलाकर. So that is something, it appeals to the hearer, listener, on various levels. Now, on one level, it is talking of a physical pair of a lover and a beloved. They could be mortal. On the other level, they are talking of something that is immortal, that is the divine, that, like once you get involved in worship, which is what the Sufis do after the Sharia, Tariqa, and the Haqiqat, when they reach those stages, everything leads them to the divine. And so, when you are saying that chap tilak sab china re mose naina milake, you're talking of the divine in whom you have subsumed your identity. It can also mean a physical pair where the girl has, like lost her identity in her husband or her beloved. So it, like all these there were so many very, very everyday symbology and symbolism that was used by these saints to take the message forward to the listener and to the viewer. And that is why, like today, when people go there and you hear something like, Sufiana kalam, and you'll hear it in movies and all, those are actually not Sufiana kalams. They're just something that has a basis in Sufism or in Qawwali, but it is not meant on a spiritual level. It's only meant on a very, very level of of the world, a material level.
So it is also regarding the miracles of a Sufi that the lay people, the common people, always believe in miracles. And when we go to a dargah and when we pray for the intercession, he or she always try to believe that something will come to me with the karamat. So karamat is a kind of a power where people believe that it has to be come from the saint. And so everyone feel that whoever go, for example, in your chapter on possession and dispossession of a saint, like so mostly people visit dargahs for mental relief, hope, getting out of distress, and getting out of illness, fearing of evil eye, etc. So in the chapter you are talking about the medical practices happening in dargahs. Do you really think that still, as you said that in the Bhima Palli, which is in the coast of Trivandrum, you can see a lot of people who are with the mental distress, visiting there, and people has been chained for getting treated for the mental illness. Do you really think that how in a 21st century, the so-called rational time, this kind of belief, the possession and dispossession of the jinns has to be belief?
So, like the jinn is mentioned in the Quran as somebody who is the third element. Like there are three creatures that God created. One are the angels who are created out of light or nur. Angels are, if I use today's language, they are programmed to only worship God. They cannot do anything wrong. They can only obey. Their only job in this thing is to obey. And there are angels which are said to have been in prostration or sajda for thousands and thousands of years. Then there are angels, of course, like Jibrail and Mikhail and all who carry the messages. Then you have the second, the makhluk or the creatures that were created by God were the jinns who were made out of smokeless fires. Now, these jinns had free will. The third that was created was man, created out of clay or dust. Now, just like the jinns, man also has, or humans also have free will. They can do whatever they do. But the extra advantage, or I should say, the extra this thing that the jinns have is that they're shapeshifters. They can change into any shape they want, and they can come in on earth and live as a human also. You'll hear very often about them as, like if you see a black cat in a dargah or in a masjid, they'll say to zarur jinn hoga. So, and jinns are of every kind, as just as man is of every kind, humans are of every kind. So jinns are good and bad, every kind. And jinns also live and die, they marry, they have children, etc., just like men. But only thing is that they are mostly invisible, or if they are visible to you, they are shapeshifters. Now, this legend about jinns, it comes up with very early on. You have a lot of wazifas or particular prayers where if you do a certain say the thing, like you do 40 days chilla or something, and you can, like then the jinns start, you can have them in your control, and that is what is said, and that they will then listen to what you say. And so if somebody, and see, this is, if you go, well, as the dargahs that I visited, it's mostly women who are there for possession. Now, when we were very young, I think as schoolgirls and all, we were always told by our grandparents and our parents, don't go out in the evening into the open air, especially with open hair, because then the jinn may fall in love with you, and then that's the end of your life, because you cannot go forward. So we were never allowed to go out in the evening, especially wearing fragrance or with open hair as we were growing up. So these are all legends that have come up. But in a dargah, what you will see is that mostly women are there. Now, this is a couple of reasons. One is there's a particular economic strata that comes there for this, because they do not have access to psychiatrists and neurosurgeons. Also, like coming to a dargah is not a stigma. If you are seeing a psychiatrist, now I'm quoting from what my interaction with the women was, okay, the girl will be seen as somebody who is crazy. In Hindi they use the word pagal. That's a very negative term. So they feel that coming to a dargah is an act of devotion. So it's better for the girl. Otherwise, her reputation gets spoiled, and her chances of getting married are become slim. So that is why in most dargahs you will see it's women who are there. Sometimes they are chained, some so that they, because they don't run away. Now these are all psychological and psychiatric diseases, and I have spent a lot of time talking to these people, saying that yes, please keep praying, but do take them for some treatment as well. But that is what they don't do, and many of these are not Muslims who come there. In the Bijapur, I went there, and when I went to Bijapur, it was the time of Amavasya, and in Amavasya they say all the bad spirits come out, and then the good spirits can control them. Now there are different types of jinns. One is a jinn who's called a mutawakkil, or he is your client, the saint who has done the wazifa. So then these mutawakkils have different agents, and then they go and capture the bad jinns. That is what is said, and that is what I've described, because I was very fascinated by this. And I have even seen people, I have attended one session, a couple of sessions, where I've seen this kind of, it's called hazri, where this kind of hazri is taking place. As a young girl, I heard once about it in Bareilly. My parents did not not let me go there. And there was this Baba who would, get the suck the jinns out of the person who's supposed to be possessed, and he would talk to them. I heard that recording, and Baba asked the jinn and said, "He's from Russia." He says, "Why have you possessed this girl?" And he says, "Because we don't have such beautiful girls amongst ourselves." So these are all legends and stories. How much of it is psychological, I cannot say, but the belief in jinn is a part of every Muslim. So a lot of these legends have come up. And as I said, I keep telling I see a lot of it in Delhi, in Hazrat Namuddin Dargahs also, Hazri. It's also, one person told me once, was that it's a way for the woman, as I said, it's a particular economic strata that comes there, of the woman to escape the husband and come and sit in the dargah so the husband doesn't trouble her. So, there are various ways in which people interact with the divine, and with intercession with the Aulia or the Walis or the Sufi saints.
I think it's so we can compare it with the possession of a Gandharvan in Kerala's legends that we have. The Gandharvans possess beautiful girls if they are going, particular time in the evening, and yeah. So when you are talking about these saints, like I also found bit uh, interesting is that most of the saints you are discussing are males. So and when we are also student of history, uh, even in our master's days, and when I am doing my PhD also, so most of the saints we found are from the male, and the Sufi orders are basically initiated from the male. Can you give us some impressions about what is the gender perspective on this?
As I said, Sufism comes up from that ecstatic love. That is the first person to, talk about ecstatic love was Rabia al-Basri. And so it's this the what they derive from is from a woman. If we talk about Islam, the most famous iconic woman in Islam is supposed to be Khadija, who was the Prophet's first wife. She was a very, very popular, very powerful business person of Mecca. I'm not saying woman, because she was at par with the men, so I'm saying person. And she employed the Prophet, and it's a very well known story that how the Khadija was very impressed by his honesty and his integrity, and she sent a proposal to him. He was 15 years her junior, but he accepted the proposal. In those days, the dower, and even today it continues in Islam, that the dower is given by the man, not the dowry is not given by the woman. And so he says, "I don't have that dower." And, like she says, all that, it's a very simple dower that's arranged because, and he goes to live in her house. So when you see this kind of iconic women, and what we would today term feminism, then you have the Prophet's daughter, Fatima, she died at the age of 18, but she spent her years in piety and, in devotion. But when she felt that after the Prophet's death, her rights were being taken away, she went to the court of the caliph to fight for her rights, because there were some property issues which she went to fight for. Then you have his younger wives, Aisha and Hafsa, who Aisha is one of the major this thing of hadith. She is the one who's related the most of the hadith. Then you have Hafsa, who's the daughter of the third caliph, and it is she who was she has the repository of all the Quranic verses, and the Usman Codex that has come from the documents that were manuscripts that were with Hafsa. So when you see the role of women traditionally, and then you come to see the role of women today, it's patriarchy at its best. It's in every religion, and many times, like people quote the Quran and say that the Quran says that women have a lesser right than man. But if you see that this verse is only that it is only once mentioned that a woman is in any way lesser than a man, and that is in the rights of divorce. Because for a divorce, a man can give a direct divorce over a period of 3 months, not in 3 days or three times at once. Over a period of 3 months, a man can give a divorce. But if a woman wants a divorce, which is called khula, she has to go through the legal route. So that's the only place where a man has an advantage over women. Otherwise, as per Islam, man and woman are made from a single soul. Uh, in the Judeo-Christian, the saying that you have tradition, Eve is made out of the rib of Adam, but not in Islam. Islam, they're made out of a single soul. And also the onus of eating from the tree is for both. They are both responsible for their own deeds of straying away from the orders of Allah, and for being punished. So they're both punished equally, and that is how the punishment in Islam is. Every man and woman is punished equally, and the deeds are whatever they are given, whether they were given, whatever degree they are given, that they are it's a good deed, evil deed, bad deed, or whatever it is. It's equal for man and women. In the end, everybody sleeps in a 6 feet grave. It's not as if a man is going to sleep in a 10 feet grave and a woman is going to sleep in a 5 feet grave. So, this kind of equality over the years changed into patriarchy, because the Arab society was very patriarchal. Where it spread later on, also it was a lot of patriarchy. And when these in Arabic and in Persian and also in Urdu, there are words which have gender. There's a feminine noun and a masculine noun. The word dunya is a feminine noun, and the word fitna, which is chaos and confusion, is also a feminine noun. So a woman is called a fitna, and she's supposed to be like the dunya or the world. She's supposed to be fickle. She's supposed to tempt you. She's supposed to lead you astray and lead you into committing fitna. So these are how, I think the time is up. She just came for that. So I'll just stop there. But I've got a full chapter with a lot of research on the women saints, a book that was discovered in the 10th century, was discovered much later, written in the 9th and 10th century by As-Sulami, called Early Women Sufis, has names many, many Sufis. In fact, the most famous Sufi, Ibn al-Arabi, had talks of Fatima of Nishapur, and he says that she was his peer. So you find all that, but all this in literature which has been not talked about enough.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. I think now I will open a Q&A session, and if it will be great that we can have a proper engagement with
Yeah,
Rana, ma'am.
okay. Yeah, I have one question.
Please.
See, the fundamental difference between the mainstream Islam and Sufism is the concept of shirk. Islam says only God has the godly powers, you can pray only to Him. Whereas Sufism, as you said, the saints have the legends that you talked about. They have supernatural powers, so people go to Dargah and pray to them. So, what is the take on the concept of shirk?
You see, these are all traditions that have developed. It is not that Sufism is saying this. The Sufi saints, if you read the histories or the Malfuzats, etc., that are written by the saints, the preaching of the saints, none of them are talking of all this. These are legends which develop later on. Like you go to a particular place and you feel that, okay, this is where you were heard. You want to go there again and again. So these are legends. But jinns definitely do, as per the Quran, they are shifters. So, and then you start attributing, just as you feel that, person, a doctor or somebody who's not even a doctor, you go to him for your cures or for healing, and if he heals you, you'll keep going to him whether he has a certificate or not. So these are all stories. But a lot of, I say this very often, that you can't blame Islam for what the Muslims do, and you can't blame Sufis for many of what the people who go to the dargah do.
How, can you explain what is mysticism? And people are mostly attracted on mysticism when Sufi is concerned. And Tasawwuf, so mostly other people are attracted Sufism because of mysticism of their life. Can you explain that?
See, tasawwuf, from which this word mysticism also comes, or it becomes the mystical dimension of Islam. Tasawwuf is the word that was first used for the people who are claimed to be Sufis, and it is said that the Prophet himself was the first Sufi. So tasawwuf is a mystical path which leads to ethical and spiritual cleansing, to realize God in yourself. So it's something that makes you purify yourself from inside. So that is tasawwuf, where you spend your time in contemplation of God. Tasawwuf is just, like contemplation of God with the end result of a union with Him, or to realize Him in yourself. And then you have those, the fana and the baqa, that you subsume yourself in God, and then you find subsistence in God Himself. I hope I've explained it to you.
Um, I want to understand, I mean, the influence of Shiism on Sufism, and because of this intervention that even Shias ask in their prayers through maybe, say, Hazrat Ali, do you think what is the response to the larger Muslim community all over the world? Because even Shias are a troubled minority for these similar practices.
So that is in my book, these are the two things that I've talked about majorly, which are a little different from other books. Is one is that I've tried to place Sufism very much inside Islam, and the second part of it is that I've said that without understanding the Ahle Bayt, you cannot understand Sufism. And Ahle Bayt is the family of the Prophet. Now, most of the four major silsilas, the Chishtis, the Qadris, and the Sohrawardis, they trace their descendant from Ali. And the Naqshbandis, who do not trace it from Ali, actually trace it from somebody who is a descendant of Ali and the first caliph. So every strain goes back to Ali. And then you have the famous, all those Man Kunto Mola, Hazaf Ali, Hazaf. It'll come to me. I'm sorry. Fahaza Aliun Mola. So that whoever is my Mola, whoever is my this thing follower, his Mola is also Ali. Now, this word has been interpreted by, the schism, the sectarianism that comes of the Shia Sunni split, that comes around the time of Ali, and even a little later it develops. And that is, that in the when the Prophet did his first and only Hajj, he stops in the plains of Ghadir, which is a place near Medina, and he puts Ali up on a mound of saddles, and he raises his hand and says, Man kunto Mola fa haza Aliun Mola. Whoever's Mola I am, Ali is also his Mola. Now, the word Mola can be interpreted in many ways, friend or leader. The Shias take it as leader, so they say that as the closest companion of the Prophet. Also, Ali, as a 10-year-old boy, was the first to accept Islam. Khadija came later, as she's the first woman. The first man is, of course, the caliph. But Ali was a 10-year-old child, so he's not called the first man. But he was the first to accept Islam, and he stayed with the Prophet always. And in fact, there's a hadith that he's the Aaron to my Musa. So they were that close, and then he became the son-in-law also. So the sect that divided and later became the Shias, they feel that Ali was the natural successor of the Prophet, whereas the Ahle Sunnat believe that it is the first Prophet there was Abu Bakr, and so that is how the schism came. And but when you go to a dargah, most of them are Sayyids, and that means they're descended from Sayyida, or the daughter has to be Ali also. And most of them call themselves as Sunnis also. So, like these sectarian differences can just go away, but they are there. And yes, the Shias, because, and that is why I've said, like you cannot take away the Prophet or the Imams, because Jafar-e-Sadiq, the sixth Imam of the Shias, or the 12ers, Jafar-e-Sadiq is the one from whom the most mystical knowledge comes. So you cannot separate them. And in fact, the thing of jurisprudence, Imam Shafi and Imam Hanbali were his students. So everything goes back there. So that is the source. So you cannot divorce it from what happens later on.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to ask you, see, being a devout Muslim, I was taught, and I do, is I pray straight to God. Do we need an intermediator or a medium in between God and yourself to ask for what you want, or ask for forgiveness, or whatever you want? Because the Quran, I'm not a scholar or anything, I'm a laywoman, but it's said in the Quran, you can ask me direct, isn't it?
Of course you can. If you're that close to Allah and your devotions are that perfect, of course you ask. Like after every namaz, I pray to Allah. But then there are times in which I also seek intercession. So if you've reached that degree of perfection, there's nothing like it. You can just pray directly and wait for acceptance. Sometimes you need a wasila, as I just explained in a very simple way. It's, the mother, father. If you feel that he's so strict, or you are, because we are all taught to fear God, we are never taught to love God or to accept him as somebody who is there in our lives. We are always scared that, if we do anything wrong, we'll go to hell, we'll be, punished, we'll have nails stuck into us. I don't know what all descriptions of hell we are all given. And that puts off a lot of people from, in fact, worshipping itself. They say, if we are going to sin anyway, what's the sense of it? We may as well spend our life as sinning, because if everything is a sin, then where's the, what is the thing? So that's the opposite reaction. So that is what I would like to say, that, like devotions are very, very personal.